President Trump has announced that the much-anticipated meeting with Kim Jong Un in Singapore in June may be delayed. The news came during a visit with South Korean President Moon Jae-in, who is in Washington. Anya Parampil has more tonight.
Moon arrived at the White House amidst heightening anxiety here in Washington that North Korea will walk into June's negotiation more confident than previously imagined. Judging from Trump's statement this afternoon, those fears were confirmed.
And we'll see what happens. There are certain conditions that we want, and I think we'll get those conditions. And if we don't have the meeting. And frankly, it has a chance to be a great, great meeting for North Korea and a great meeting for the world. If it doesn't happen, maybe it'll happen later.
North Korea has already demonstrated the strength of its negotiating position by winning an important concession from the United States before the talks even begin. On Friday, the Wall Street Journal reported the U.S. canceled joint military exercises, including B-52 bombers, scheduled to take place with South Korea and Japan. According to the report, the drills were halted after the South Korean government, quote, expressed concerns that it could generate tensions before the summit meeting between President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong Un. Earlier in the week, North Korea canceled planned talks with South Korean officials in protest of the exercises, also threatening to call off the Trump-Kim summit. But that's not the only way in which the North has demonstrated it means business. Following remarks made by Trump's national security advisor John Bolton suggesting the, quote, Libya model for denuclearization could be on the table for Korea, the North released a scathing response declaring, quote, it is absolutely absurd to dare compare the DPRK, a nuclear weapon state, to Libya, which had been at the initial state of nuclear development. We shed light on the quality of Bolton already in the past, and we do not hide our feelings of repugnance toward him. It added, quote, if the U.S. is trying to drive us into a corner to force our unilateral nuclear abandonment, we will no longer be interested in such dialogue and cannot but reconsider our proceeding to the DPRK U.S. summit. The statement sends a strong message to President Trump that Bolton's demand the North give up its nuclear weapons program entirely before sanctions are lifted is a non-starter. Convincing Trump of this reality is part of President Moon's task in Washington. The New York Times reports, quote, the South has been advocating a more traditional confidence-building approach in which concessions by the North result in a gradual lifting of sanctions. But Mr. Trump has said he will not repeat that technique because it led to failure by his four immediate predecessors. Seoul has announced its intention to resume high-level inter-Korean talks despite last week's setbacks. Speaking at the White House, Moon seemed hopeful the Trump-Kim meeting would go on as planned.
We are looking forward to the first-ever U.S.-North Korea summit, and we find ourselves standing one step closer to the dream of achieving the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and world peace.
The question now becomes whether or not the White House can accept the fact Pyongyang will be coming to talks with demands of its own, and whether it can treat the negotiations as just that, negotiations, rather than an opportunity for the United States to attempt to dictate the future of the Korean Peninsula unilaterally. In Washington, Anya Parampil, RT.